If you're new to the world of WordPress but want to get a head start on building your first blog, or if you're looking for a great overview of the free Blocksy theme, then I think this video is going to be perfect for you. Plus, we'll be doing all of this in around 90 minutes. Now, I'm going to take you step by step through the entire process of building a blog with WordPress. I'll also show you how to purchase your hosting and domain name and add an SSL certificate for security, and how to start adding your own content, as well as the basics of SEO or search engine optimization. So by the time you finish this video, you should be ready and able to build your own WordPress blog. If you want to learn more once you complete this video, there will be some useful links in the description below to help you get to know SEO in more detail, along with some other really useful things. Plus, if you want to jump around or go back to a previous topic in this video, there's a full timestamps in the description below for your ease. So you ready to get started? Great. Let's take a look at the end result we're working towards in today's video. So this is the kind of thing we're going to be creating. It's a very simple, clean blog all about living life. It's a blog about food, about dieting, about exercise, those kinds of things. So we've got a very clean, simple looking layout. You can see we've got some animations bringing the different items onto our screen. We've got various different navigation. You can see we can jump through the various different sections. So if we're interested in vegan, for example, we can click, and again, we have that animation. We can go in and take a look at the individual post. You can see there's all our nicely laid out post section. We've got sharing icons, related posts, all those kinds of super useful things. So this is what we're going to be creating. Now let's take a look at how we're going to do it. Now we've taken a quick look at the end results, let's start the tutorial by grabbing some hosting and a domain name. Now, if you're not familiar with the term hosting or what it is, the easiest way to understand it is, well, it's kind of like your own computer or laptop. The files needed to view the internet or use applications like Microsoft Word are stored on your computer. And when you click on the icon to launch that application, it loads the files in and opens the program. A hosting company does, well, kind of the same thing for your website. They have servers or big computers with loads of storage that hold the software required to store and deliver your website to anyone with a link, or what's called the URL, to the site or to a specific page. So when someone types in the link to your website, those servers will send all the relevant files to display the page to the user's browser via the internet, and they then see the web page inside their browser. So to be able to make your blog available to anyone interested, we need to have hosting and store all the website files there. So for this tutorial, we'll be using SiteGround, but there are lots of great alternative hosting companies you could choose from. For some suggestions, please take a look in the description of the video. Today, for hosting, we're going to be using SiteGround, but there are lots of really good options available. With SiteGround, we're going to be choosing the managed WordPress hosting because it gives us some WordPress related features. So we click on Get Started, we can take a look at the different plans that they have. Now currently there are 3 key plans: Startup, Grow Big and Go Geek. If all you're doing is hosting one single website, I would say the Startup plan is going to be perfectly fine for most use cases. If you want to have more than one website though, Grow Big might be a better option, and obviously if you have more resources needed, well, Go Geek. The nice thing with this though is if you started with Startup and then you found you outgrew it, you can easily upgrade to the Grow Big account very, very easily. So that's one of the reasons why we're going to do using SiteGround. So let's get the ball rolling by choosing the Startup plan, and then we'll go through and see how easy it is to purchase everything. Now the first thing you're going to come across is, do you want to register a new domain? And your domain is just basically the www.mywebsite.com. That's what your domain basically is. So we're going to say we want to register one. So the first thing I'm going to need to do here is go through and search to find a domain that's going to be available and also in keeping with what I want to use for my website. So I'm going to pop in the domain that I'm looking for. There's my domain, and then you can see we've got what's called the domain extension. So we've got currently .co.uk because I'm based in the UK, but you can still choose from a range of different options. You could be looking for a .com, you could be looking for anything, a .org, .net, whatever is applicable to you. I'm going to choose the .com at this point, and we're going to see if that's available. So you can see we've got the option to register this domain. It's going to cost us £11.95 per year, excluding any taxes. Obviously, you need to check out what the price is going to be depending upon what country you're in. And we'll say proceed. That's going to go now check to see if that domain is available to me. If it is, you can see it tells me congratulations, that's available, and now I can pop in the rest of my details. So I'm going to fill these out, and then we're going to move on to the next stage. So all you need to do is fill out your payment information, all those kinds of things. And you can see, before we do move on, there's these hosting services. Now just make sure that you only check the things that you want at this point. It tells us the plan we're using, which is startup. Tells us the data center, in other words, where all our files are going to reside, where the server that has all of our files is going to be. Because I'm based in the UK, it's thinking that the UK is going to be the best option. But this is something worth bearing in mind. If you're building a website and your target audience is in a different country to where you are, it would make sense to change the data center, in other words, like I say, where all your files are going to reside, to a location that's closer to your target audience. So if your target audience is in the USA, you may want to choose some US-based servers. This just means they're going to find your website is going to be faster, more responsive, and they're just going to have a better experience using it. So if you want to change that, you can hit the little refresh and it'll go through and you can choose things. Then you've got the period. How long do you want to take out the hosting plan for? Now, as long as we take it over 12 months or more, we'll tend to get a better deal with SiteGround. And it's always worth checking out any deals that might be ongoing because they do run deals from time to time. So you can see if we go for 1 month, that's going to give us a much more expensive price of $16.99 per month plus VAT or taxes. However, if we go for the 12 months, you can see that drops to $5.99 a month. Or if we go higher than that, you can see we can change that. But at the moment, the best deal is most definitely going to be for the 12 months. Then you've got extra services. Domain registration, because we chose to have a domain registered, but obviously if you didn't choose that, it won't be checked. Then you've got domain privacy and you've got the SiteGround site scanner. Now, domain privacy basically means when you register a domain, you don't want any of the information associated with your company, your individual, your name, address, anything like that to be made publicly available. So domain privacy is something you can apply to the domain, and that will then make all that information hidden from site. It's very useful if you want to avoid having lots and lots of phone calls trying to sell you web design services once you registered a domain. However, for our example today, I'm not going to select that, but think about whether you want it for something yourself. And the SG Site Scanner is just basically a service that runs on top of your website to check, just to make sure that there's monitoring on your website to check for malware, all different kinds of things, viruses and so on. Again, if you want that for peace of mind, you can use that here, but there are plenty of other services you could use that will do a similar thing, so you don't have to use that as part of SiteGround. And for this example, I'm going to leave those two options disabled. This gives me the running total then, any taxes that are applicable, and then I can confirm this, and if I want to receive any news or special offers from SiteGround by email, I can check that option. So once that's done, we'll pay that, and then we're going to move on. Now, once you've done that, you're going to have a couple of emails, you're going to have to fill out your details, and you have to confirm your account. Once all that is done, and you're logged into your SiteGround home section, this is where we can start working on our site. So when you log into SiteGround, this is what you're going to see first of all. You can see we've got home where we are, which gives us some tips and some information and different things that SiteGround offers. What we want though is basically to jump over to the websites option. Inside there, it's going to give us any of the website services we have, including hosting, all those different things. You can see there's our website, what plan we're currently using, and then we have some options like Site Tools, WordPress Kit, which are specific tools for WordPress, and a lot of other options. Now, we're not going to go through all these because, well, there's a lot of options and I don't really think we need to cover them in this video. I'd rather show you how you can get yourself up and running quickly and easily. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Site Tools. And inside there, this is kind of like our dashboard. And this is where we can control lots of different things to do with our hosting plan, our domain, our websites, and so on and so forth. Now, the first thing we need to do is apply an SSL certificate to our domain. Now, all an SSL certificate is a way of the server where your site resides encrypting any information that's sent via any kind of form. So if someone uses your contact form or the comments as part of your website, this will encrypt that data, which means that it can't be viewed by anybody and intercepted by anybody. Just adds an extra little level of security. This is where you see the little padlock symbol and all those kinds of things you're used to when you're shopping online. We're going to do that. And the nice thing with SiteGround is we have a totally free option. So what we're going to do is underneath the security section, we're going to come into SSL Manager. And inside there, we can set up where we want to apply this SSL certificate.
Now I've got a couple of domains and subdomains and things inside my account, so don't worry, yours is going to look a little different, but the process is exactly the same no matter how you've got yours set up. First thing you need to do is select the domain you want to apply the SSL to. So we're going to choose our primary domain, which we've just purchased. Then it says select the SSL. Now I've already done this on mine, but you'll see the same kind of thing. First option you'll have will be Let's Encrypt. And any other options you can basically ignore. All you want to do is choose Let's Encrypt. Once you've done that, click on Get. This will take a couple of minutes to go through, and once that's completed, you have an SSL certificate applied to your site. We need to do one more thing though before this is all fully working. We just need to go to the next option, which is HTTPS Enforce, and choose that. And what this is going to do, this is going to list any of the domains or subdomains that you have as part of your site. So again, look for the domain that you have, which you've just purchased, and then you're going to need to just flick this little switch on the right-hand side. That will then enforce secure connections. So any links that may be part of the site that are not secure will be forced over, so you don't have to worry about doing any of these technical kinds of things manually. It's all catered for, all as part of your SiteGround account. And that's basically how we purchase, set up basic hosting and the things that we need to do. The next thing we're going to look at is how we can use SiteGround's dashboard to install WordPress.
Now we have our domain registration and hosting set up. We also have our security in place to protect any of our visitors when they post comments or use the contact form. We now need to install WordPress itself and start the exciting job of building our fresh new blog.
Installing WordPress with SiteGround is really easy. All we need to do in our dashboard is come into the WordPress option and choose Install and Manage. So once we do that, we can choose between just a default WordPress or a WordPress and WooCommerce install. Now for this example, we're only going to be choosing the WordPress option. So we're going to say select that. Then we can go through and tell it exactly where and how we want to set things up. Now, we're going to use the primary domain, which is the Pro website one. Installation path, we're going to leave it exactly as it is. All I want to do is change the language to my native language, which is English UK. I don't want to install the starter site information, so we're going to uncheck that option. And then all we need to do is generate or create our password, our username, and our email. So I'm going to do that quickly. Once I've done that, I can choose whether this is going to be a multi-site, which in this example, we don't want. So we're going to click install, and we're going to let that do its job. It takes a couple of seconds. Once that's done, we've basically installed WordPress onto our server. Really easy. And there we go. We've installed WordPress onto our domain. Now we can simply log into the admin panel, or we can view the site itself. So let's view the site first of all so we can see where we're starting off. As you can see, this is just basically an empty blank site in WordPress. Pretty much nothing there other than the default theme and the basic information that WordPress installs. So let's come back over and let's just hop over into the admin panel. And the nice thing with this is we're already logged in with the details we've just set up when we installed WordPress. So this is now our clean copy of WordPress ready for us to start working. So there's a couple of things I want to do before we go any further, some basic sort of housekeeping kinds of things. When you install WordPress, it installs a couple of plugins and some posts and some different bits and pieces. We don't want any of that, so I want to get rid of it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come into our post section, into all posts, and we're going to delete anything that's inside here. So we're going to just drop that into the bin, and we'll do exactly the same for the pages. We're just going to get rid of both of these pages, and we're going to say move to bin and apply. So now we've got rid of those pages. Let's hop over to the plugin section and take a look at install plugins. Now, depending upon if you're using SiteGround or maybe a different hosting company, you may see different plugins inside here. For this example though, we're going to deactivate this SG Optimizer, which is part of SiteGround. We can activate that later if we want to and benefit from what that does, which is effectively speeds up the site. But it's better to switch that off when you're building your site because it basically caches things. And caching means that it uses the server to store files that change very infrequently or your browser. And this can kind of lead to some frustrations where you may make changes to your site and you find they don't reflect on the front end. And that's basically because those files may be cached. So by deactivating it, we stop that being a problem. But like I say, when your site's ready to launch, if you want to activate that, you can do that. Now, the next thing I want to do is just come into the settings section, and inside here, we've got all the different things that allow us to set up the basics for our WordPress site. So title, whether we want to allow people to add comments, the permalinks, which is just how we can have the links on our site display, and we're going to go through and set those up. So general is where we can choose the various different things like the site title and the tagline. So at the moment, by default, it says My WordPress. So let's just change that to My Cool Blog, for example. And if you want to put a tagline in, you can do. I'm just going to take that out and leave that as it is. Okay, so we can see the WordPress URL is set to the URL that we've created and the address is the same. But you'll notice that it's not using that HTTPS. In other words, it's not enforcing that secure SSL we've just applied. Dealing with that is really, really easy. You need to just put the S at the end of that so it reads HTTPS. That's it. That's all we need to do. Then you can choose different things like what day the week starts on, any date format you might want to change if you want to set these up, but really you can just leave them as they are. Now we hit Save Changes and this will log us back out of the site because we've changed the link to the admin and to the site itself. But don't worry, we can just simply click Login again with those details and we're now back in and we're fully secure. So next up on our house cleaning list, we just need to go in and check the discussion options. So I'm going to come into here and you can see there's a lot of options. This is where we can control whether we want to allow comments on our blog. Now, a blog generally allows people to have comments, but you might not want that to be the case. So you can enable or disable that feature inside here, and that will apply globally. In other words, every single blog post or page you create on your site will follow that rule. However, you can still override that when you create posts. You can set them to have comments. So you may want to have most of your pages and posts not having comments, but a couple of select ones you may want to have the option to enable those. Well, you can do that on a post by post basis. However, what I would recommend for most cases is to disable these if you don't want them to be able to comment on your posts. It'll just cut back on the junk you might end up receiving. All we need to do is click on allow people to submit comments on new posts, uncheck that, and we pretty much got rid of it. You can see though other comment settings. If you do want to allow comments, there's various different things inside here, so you can stop to a certain extent some of the junk that you may appear on posts that you post. So you can see users must be registered and logged in to comment. Well, you might want to force registration, so people have to be registered on your website before they can post a comment. You can do that inside here. So I would say read through these and see if anything you think is applicable to you and your particular use case. For me, I'm going to disable the comments option for now. Let's just quickly come down and save those changes. And the final thing I want to do is come into the permalinks option, and depend upon who you use to host your website and how it's set up, you might find that this is set to plain as default. And as you can see, this gives us a pretty ugly and not very useful URL to any of the pages or posts that we create. Thankfully, SiteGround takes care of this for us, but like I say, that might not always be the case if you're not using SiteGround. But what I would generally recommend you do is simply choose post name as the option, and then you can just set it and forget it. Hit Save Changes and you are done. So other than that, we've done our housekeeping. The next thing we need to do is take a look at the theme we're going to be using for our new blog.
Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, for this tutorial we'll be using the free version of the Blocksy theme for WordPress. Now, if you're not familiar with WordPress or the concept of themes in general, they're basically really an easy way of installing a completely different design for your WordPress site, and they generally come with loads of really cool customization features. Okay, so let's hear how to install Blocksy and get started building our awesome looking new blog.
Now that we've gone ahead and done the housekeeping on our site, we're ready to choose the theme or the design we're going to use as the basis for our new blog. So there are tons, if not thousands, of different themes you can pick and choose from when it comes to WordPress, and it can kind of be a little bit overwhelming. Today though, I'm going to show you a free theme that has an absolute boatload of options. There's a pro option as well if you want to use that, but you don't need it, and we're going to be using the free version for pretty much the entire video. So don't worry about anything you might think you need in the pro version. The theme is called Blocksy. So if we hop over to their site, you can see this is the theme we're going to be using. And the reason we're going to be using this is because it has an absolute boatload of features included in the free version, including a custom header and footer designer, which is really, really easy to use, which I will be showing you as part of this video. The reason I think that's really useful is because you can customize your header and footer to put exactly what you want in there and get a lot of control in a very easy visual fashion. So now we've picked the theme, let's go ahead and install it. All we need to do is come to Appearance and into Themes, and inside there we can pick and choose. Now you can see there's already 3 themes installed as default as part of WordPress. We're going to ignore those though completely. We're going to say Add New, and we're going to come to the top right and we're going to search for a theme. So we're going to search for Blocksy. And once that's found that, we're just simply going to click on install. So that's going to download all the files and then allow us to install it, and then we can choose to activate it. So let's choose activate, and that's now applied that as our custom theme. We also need to install the Blocksy companion, and this is just a plugin which expands what you can do with Blocksy itself and gives us some more controls to get in and customize all the things we need. All we need to do is click on install the Blocksy companion, and again let that download, and then we can activate it, and we are pretty much good to go. So this is saying you want to sign up to Freemius, which is basically a way of making sure that the theme is kept up to date. It's up to you what you want to do. You can see exactly what permissions are going to be granted if you choose to do this, but you'll just be notified that there's going to be an update to your theme. It's up to you. I'm going to say skip for this example, but please do read through that and choose whether you think this is something relevant to you. Okay, so once we've installed everything, we're now at the Blocksy companion section, and this is broken down into various different sets. You can see if we want to, we can choose to allow and continue to stay updated, which is basically the same as what we just saw in the last step. So if you confirmed you're happy with that, you won't see this. But if you want to come back and retrospectively do that, well, you can just click on the allow and continue, and you are good to go. Across the top, we have home, which is what we're currently looking at, starter sites, which are pre-designed sites using Blocksy with different kinds of styles and layouts for different sectors, so business, shops, and so on, which you can easily just download and install, and you have a ready-made website all set up for you, which you can then just go in and make changes to. They're great options, but for this, we're not going to worry about that. If we look at extensions, you can see we have extra extensions, which some are active, or we can activate them. So we could be building a blog or a site where you want to do some affiliate marketing with it. Well, we have a built-in feature inside Blocksy for affiliate marketing. So your blog might be about tech, and you might be linking those through to Amazon affiliate items. Well, you could use this as part of the theme to do just that. So it's really cool that you have those options. We're not going to use it in this particular video, but if you're interested, let me know and I'll take a look at creating an affiliate-based website using Blocksy and WordPress, and we'll take a look at that feature in a lot more detail. We then have things like cookie consent, MailChimp if you want to link this up to MailChimp to send out automatic emails, trending, which is a way of seeing different topics on the site that are trending, which could be perfect for a blog. And again, if you want to activate that, you simply click the activate option, and it opens up some extra options inside the customizer where we can control exactly how our site works and how it looks. And finally, you've got the widgets. So this is things like popular and recent posts, advertisements, contact info, MailChimp subscribe, and so on. So we're going to activate that option because there's some cool things inside there. And you can see that's now active, so we'll have access to those different things. We'll click to activate the cookie consent. And this means that we've got a cookie consent option that makes people consent to that before they view our site. So this is something that you need to look into a little bit more detail if you're not familiar with cookie consents, but this is built into Blocksy. Useful plugins is just a link to other plugins that they think are useful. So things like Gutenberg blocks, Stackable, Getwid, HubSpot, all different kinds of things. Up to you if you want to install anything on there. And we might come back and take a look at something like the Elementor or Brizy page builders later to expand what you can do inside building your website with Blocksy. Changelog is just going to tell you all the updates, what was updated, when it was updated, and so on. Let's hop back to the home section. Now inside here, you can see we've got Customizer shortcuts. This will allow us to jump straight to the section. So if we want to set our color options up, we can jump straight to that from here. Sidebars, footers, all those kinds of things. If you want to use those, you can do, but I'm going to show you the Customizer in a lot more detail in a moment. So now we've got everything installed and ready to go. Let's take a look at how we can start designing the look of our site.
Now, before we start setting everything up, let me give you a very brief overview of what's called the WordPress Customizer and how it's set up, as we'll be spending a fair bit of time here setting up, tweaking and configuring our theme to get the most out of it.
Now, when you're using a theme as part of WordPress, you're going to do most of the editing, the design, setting the colors, the typography, all those kinds of things, all will be done inside the Customizer. The Customizer is a centralized location which gives you access to all of the theme options. So to get to that, we're going to come to Appearance and choose Customize. Now, while the Customizer will always look the same in WordPress, the options are going to be different depending upon what theme you have installed and active. So this is all to do with the Blocksy settings. So what you have inside the Customizer is the left-hand side is going to show you all of the options. The main section on the right hand side is going to show you the page that you're currently working on. So as you can see, this is our home page. We've got our little cookie consent, we've got our header, we've got a footer, and we've got a sort of content area. Now at the moment we have no content on our site. In a moment I'm going to put a little plugin onto this just so I can have some fake text, some fake images and so on, so you can see how we can build things up. Okay, so what do we have inside the customizer? Let's take a quick overview and then we'll take a look at how we start using the various different sections to build and customize our site. In this example, we're broken down into a couple of different sections. First of all, it tells us the active theme is Blocksy. And if we want to change that, we can click change and we can hop over and choose a different theme. You then have things broken down into general options, your post types, which is to do with the blog itself, pages, which is to do with static pages that are similar to a post, but a little different. Then you've got visitor engagement, so things like your social networks and so on. Extensions, so any of those extensions we chose to install when we were taking a look at activating and setting up Blocksy itself. Then you've got the core option, which is core to the actual theme. So things like the site identity, the menus that are going to be used, and so on. Now, if we come into any of these by clicking on them, we then get extra options inside there. So in this example, we've got the layout, breadcrumbs, buttons, and so on. We can enable and disable things like scroll to top and website frame. And if we dig down a little deeper, for example, into layout, you can see inside there, we've now got a set of options that are specific to the layout of your site. So currently we've got the maximum width set to 1290 pixels, but we could adjust that if we wanted to. And you'll see as we adjust it, we get a live preview of the changes we're making inside the right-hand side, which is the sort of overview of what the site looks like. Okay, so you can see that pretty much every section inside here has a little help section underneath to tell you what each of these does. So if you're unfamiliar, which you probably will be at the beginning, take a little bit of time just to read those and see what they do. So things like the content area spacing, the main content area top and bottom spacing. So this is just the space you can see above this little bit of text, and the same in the footer. So we could increase that if we want to. You can see, again, we get a live preview of that changing, or we can decrease it to make it a little tighter to the top. We can also set these up based upon the different types of device. So let's set that back to 60. And you might want to have different values on the desktop, on a tablet, and on a mobile. Well, we can use these little icons to switch between the different preview modes, and we can set different values inside there. So you can see on a mobile, we get 50 pixels top and bottom. On a tablet and on a desktop, 60 pixels. So we can easily make changes to anything that relates to different kinds of devices that we're viewing things on. Now, if we come back out of layout and say into general and back out of here again, we come into something like the header, for example, you can see this gives us slightly different options. We've got the header and footer builder. So this is the header section broken down into 3 different components. So we're going to come back to this in more detail when we create our custom header. But all we've got inside here is the simple ability to choose what elements are going to be in any location, and then we can choose those elements and we have extra options associated with them. So it's a really simple and intuitive way of working. And again, you've got different sort of settings for different types of devices. So you can set one logo to be available on desktop and a different logo to be available on tablets and mobiles. So you might have a smaller version, lots of different reasons why to have different things. And a design, this is where you can choose things like colors that are going to be associated with various different parts of the site, and also the font family, the size, and the type of weight that the font has applied to it. You can set these on individual design items, or you can set them globally by coming back out of all of this and going into typography. And inside there, we've got the base font, which is going to be the font that's going to be the starting point for your site. And then if you want to change those on the headings, for example, or the buttons, you can change those, or you can leave it set to default family, and it will pick up whatever is set inside the base font value. And again, you've got the type of font, you've got the size of font, and then you've got the weight of the font. And if you click on the right-hand side, you can see you've got a lot of really nice simple options, including some extra formatting like capitalize and uppercase and line through and underline and so on. So you really can get creative with how your fonts and your styling and all that kind of works. Same kind of goes for colors if you want to. We can come to the color section, and we can pick from any of the predefined color palettes or any of the global colors, or we can create and edit our own. So we might want to choose palette 3, for example, and we do that. You can see the colors that are used in various different parts of the site all update accordingly. Palette 2, you can see now those links change to blue. Back to palette 1, they change back to green. All of these colors are totally editable. So you can choose palette 3 and you might think you don't like color 2, for example. You can click and you can choose a different color directly inside the customizer. So it's all really simple, all really intuitive to work with. Now, before we finish up taking a look at the customizer, before we start getting in actually customizing things, there's one more thing I want to show you. We've seen on the left-hand side how we can easily go through and choose various different parts of our site. But what if you don't know the name of a particular part or where you choose to edit it? Well, the nice thing about Blocksy is, and the customizer, we can simply mouse over most things, and you can see we get either main row, we can click to edit that item, or we get this little sort of pop out sideways teardrop, which we can choose to edit that element. So we click on this, for example, you can see that now takes us straight to exactly where we need to make that change inside the customizer. If we come back out of there and we click on main row, for example, you can see that'll take us to the main row. So the WordPress Customizer gives us lots of different ways in which we can interact with the design and make changes very quick and easy. And we will come and take a look at doing all of this, and you'll see how we can interact with various different things, make those changes as we go through. One very, very final thing that I do like about Blocksy is we can change this to dark mode, which for me, I prefer dark mode because it means working with the actual page itself becomes a more focal point and so it takes away the distraction of the actual interface. But again, personal option. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back out of this. We're not going to worry about saving anything because we've just been playing around for now. And we have taken a quick look at the customizer. So next up, we want to take a look at how you create posts and how you organize those posts. This is not going to be an in-depth tutorial on posts and so on. I'm just going to give you a quick overview, and then you can see how you can get started and get up to speed.
Now, before we start designing our site, we'll need just to have a little bit of content to see exactly how our changes impact the design of our blog. So if you're new to WordPress and how to add content, this will be super useful for you. However, if you're already comfortable with adding and organizing posts, well, you can basically skip this section using the timestamps in the description below.
Now, before we can see how our site is going to look when we start customizing it, we need some content added to it. So if you're new to working with WordPress and you don't know how to create posts and how to organize posts, this section is going to be useful. However, if you are accustomed to it, well, feel free to use the timestamps in the description below to hop over to the next step, which you can then carry on building and designing our site. Okay, so we're going to come into the post section, and inside there you can see we've got the ability to use all posts, add new, categories, and tags. Let me just quickly explain what categories and tags are. They're what's called in the WordPress world taxonomies, which sounds kind of confusing, but all it really means is they're ways of grouping content or posts together. So categories could be food, it could be exercise, it could be money saving, anything you want to use to group your posts together. That's a taxonomy and that's a category. Now, tags work in a very similar fashion to categories, but they're generally used as a second level of grouping things together. So you could have an item that falls into multiple categories, but you can also have an item that's in one category, but also shares similar features with things that are in different categories. So let's just say you had a nutrition blog and you wanted to have things to do with vegan and you want to have things to do with vegetarian and so on. Well, you might have recipes, you might have general health information. Different things that allow you to group different content together that could be in multiple different categories. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail when we take a look at creating a post, because it sounds more complicated and confusing than it actually is. So let's start off by creating a couple of categories. We're going to click on categories, and inside there we can just choose what we're going to do. So let's just do that. Let's say this is going to be a nutrition-based website. So we'll do vegan, we'll do vegetarian, and we'll do fitness. And one final one, we'll just do exercise. Okay, so we've now created some categories. You'll also notice there's one by default called uncategorized. Now, once you've created some content and you put it into your own categories, you can remove uncategorized. But if you want to do that, there's something you need to do first. You need to come into the settings option, and inside there, we need to choose writing. Now you can see it says default post category is set to uncategorized, and the default mail category, if you want to send these posts in via email, is also uncategorized. To be able to delete categorize, we need to remove that dependency. So we can change this and we'll say, well, the default is going to be fitness. And we'll do the same thing on the next one. Now you could just put this under news, whatever kind of category you want to. Hit save changes, and now when we come back into our posts and categories, we can now get rid of uncategorized. So we'll delete that. and that's now gone. And you can see the checkbox next to fitness is no longer available like it is under vegan, vegetarian, and so on. That's because that's been set now as the default. So you can't delete the default. Okay, so with that being done, we've now created our categories. Now we can come in and we can say we want to add a post. So let's come to all posts first of all. And this is where you're going to see a list of all the posts you create, including the title, the author, the categories, the tags, any comments, and the date that this was posted. You can also come in and do things like you can filter this based upon the category. So if you want to, when you get a lot of content, you can easily filter this down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to add a new post. Once we do that, this will take you into the WordPress editor. This is broken down into a couple of different sections. Across the top, you can see we've got various different tools. We can add blocks. Now, blocks, when it comes to WordPress, if you consider a block to be things like a heading, it could be a picture, it could be a quote, it could be a paragraph of text. Each of those things is a block. And I'll show you how those blocks work and why it kind of puts those things into blocks in a moment. But you can see there are a lot of options. You've then got the option for modes, which we can click, and you can see we can choose between edit, so we can edit the content, and select, where we can just select the various different blocks that we've created. Undo, redo, information, and then you've got the stacking order of your blocks. So this will only come into play and be available to you to actually use once you've got some content in there. On the right hand side, you can see we can preview, we can publish, we can switch between the settings. We can take those on and off, and then we can see we've got post and we've got block. Now we've got no blocks in set up, we've got nothing on the page. This will become evident as we choose things. So let me just quickly show you how these work. So first of all, we're going to put in a title, and we're just going to call this My First Post. So now we've done that, we can start adding blocks into our design for our page. You can see once we click inside this area, we've got a couple of things we can do. It opens up a ton of options at the top because it thinks by default we're going to start typing, which in most cases is probably going to be right. So you can see we've got the option now for the undo and the redo and the information and the stacking order and all those kinds of things. So you can make your text bold, you can set it to italic, you can add links in, you can click the little drop arrow to get even more options, and you can click on the little 3 dots to get more options again. Okay, so let's just simply put in a little bit of text. Now, there's a couple of ways you could do this. If it's just text, ordinary text, you can simply click and start typing. Or you can come up and click on the plus and you can choose, for example, paragraph. You can also click on the plus on the right-hand side and you can see that'll show you 6 different options. Generally, this will show you the most recently used options. You can also click Browse All and that will open up the left-hand side and you can choose to search for a block. So you could be saying, I want to search for a paragraph. Just put that again, paragraph, and you can see that will show us anything that matches our search criteria. All pretty easy. Patterns are basically just predefined design styles. And you'll see you don't really get much in the way of pre-built patterns as part of WordPress, but there's lots of those options available and you can create your own patterns should you want to. We're going to keep this really simple though. Let's go back to our blocks. Let's simply going to come into this first section and I'm going to paste in a little block of text that I've got. So now I've got that inserted, I can now do whatever I want with it. If I want to insert a link on a particular little bit of section of text, I can click on that, I can highlight it, click the link icon, and then I can just start typing the link in. And if I've got pages or posts on my site, it'll automatically search through and find anything that matches what I start typing in. Or I can just put in any kind of link that's external. And we'll just put in the link to my website. Once that's done, you can see I can press enter to add this link. And if I want to open it in a new tab, I can just choose that option. And then we can just hit enter. And we now have a link styled based upon whatever we've set up inside the customizer. Now we've also got some more options. So we might say we want to set this first little section over there and we want to make it bold, or we can make it bold. We can make it italic if we want to. If we want, we've got extra options then on the block on the right-hand side. Now, out of the box, WordPress and Gutenberg, which is what this is using, doesn't really have a lot of options. There are lots and lots of third-party plugins that are completely free that'll open up a lot more options. I would check out on the channel and you'll see I've got videos covering some of the common, most popular ones, and you can see how they can really up the game of what you can do when it comes to working with WordPress and Gutenberg. But for this video, we want to keep this really simple and straightforward, and you can still create great looking posts, all just using the normal default editor. Okay, so what do we have on the right-hand side? You can see we can change the font size, and we've got a couple of different options inside there, or we can put a custom value in. We can choose color settings, so we can choose things like the text color, the background color. We can choose custom colors. We can clear if we set a color, so we can click on that. You can see that puts a background color in there. We want a custom color in, we can do just that. We can select that from there. And we can just adjust this to whatever we want. And then we can come up to our text and set that to be white, for example. So now we've customized that particular text or paragraph block. You've also got things like drop caps. So if you want to put a drop cap in for the first letter, you can see we can do that, and that'll put that into that particular paragraph section. Under advanced, we've got some more advanced features, things like adding HTML anchors and additional classes to style things, but that's way beyond what I want to cover in this video. So I'm just going to quickly clear these values to put everything back to the default. Now, once we put the first paragraph in, we might think, well, we want to put an image in now. So I can press enter to go to the next section, and we can now insert another block. Now, you can do the same way I've shown you and click on the plus at the top, or you can click on the plus on the right-hand side, or you can press the /, and that will pop up and show us a range of different things that we can insert. So you can see there's a range of different things like Spotify and Vimeo and Twitter and so on. So there's various different ways in which you can add different content. Let's get rid of that. And let's just click on the plus, and we're going to just find exactly what we want, which is going to be the image option, and we'll click. And now we've inserted an image placeholder. So we can choose to upload a file from our computer. We can choose the media library, which is our online resource inside our WordPress site where all our images will show, or we can insert it directly from a URL somewhere else. I'm going to choose the upload option and upload a file from my computer. So I've navigated to where my files are, and I'm going to choose the image that I want. I'm going to click on open and let that upload. That's now uploaded and ready for us to start working on. So you can see there's a preview of the image. If we want to, we can drop a caption underneath. So we're going to say vegan meal, and we can set that if we want to. We can highlight it. We can make it bold. We can make it italic. We can make it a link to something, or we can choose any of the other options. So we can set things up directly inside the editor. We've also got, again, more options on the right-hand side underneath the block section. So if I want to create a rounded looking image, I could do that. I can apply styles to this if I want to. I can apply alt text this or alternative text, which just basically means if someone doesn't see the image, it's going to give them some information about what the image would be if they saw it. Great for screen readers, things like that, which is always recommended to put this in because search engines like it, screen readers like it, and so on. So again, we're going to call this vegan meal, but you'd be a little bit more descriptive in yours. Then we can choose the image size. So at the moment this is using large, but we could change that to something different if we wanted to. And you can pick and choose what you want. I would recommend choosing the option that gives you the best viewing while not the largest file size. If you want to, though, you can actually adjust the size and scale of these images by simply using these little dots and lines on the right-hand side and also on the bottom of this. And you can see everything is scaling proportionally. So there's lots of ways in which you can set things up to display the images the way that you want. Okay, so we're going to do one more thing underneath. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to click on the plus this time though. I'm going to say another paragraph, and we're simply going to drop in a little bit more text. We're just going to break these up into two separate paragraphs. And then there we go. And we'll add one more image underneath just so we've got what looks like a nice looking blog post. So again, we're going to just choose upload for this. We're going to choose a different image this time. Let that upload. And there's our second image placed inside there. And we're just going to say this is a vegan meal again. Okay, so that's our post created. As I said earlier on, we've got things like the outline option, which allows us to see exactly what's going on in this. We've got a paragraph, then an image, then two paragraphs, then an image, then another paragraph. If you want to move these around, you can do that. You can simply click on, for example, this paragraph or this image, and then we can use the arrows at the top to move up. And you can see that now repositions it inside the order of our design. Once you're happy with that, we can click on publish if you want to make this available immediately, or we can save it as a draft. I'm going to say published so we've got some content, and you can see this now says, are you sure you want to publish it? Just check everything to make sure you're happy with it. And as you can see, the last thing it says is to put tags in. So let's come back to those in a moment. Let's hit publish on this, and we've now created our first post. But at the moment, it's not organized in any way. We're not using any categories, we're not using any tags or anything. So to get to those, all we need to do on the right-hand side is come into the post option. And inside there, we now have some options to work with the specific post. So we can make things like sticky posts. This will push those to the top of all the posts. Normally, your posts are displayed in date order, the newest at the top, the oldest at the bottom. However, you might have certain posts that you consider to be most important, and you can stick those and they will stick above any of those date-related posts. Obviously, use this sparingly because the last thing you want to do is have tons and tons of sticky posts, and then no one can really get access to the new information on your site. Permalink. Well, we saw how your permalinks are created, and this allows us to tweak those if we should want to. I would generally say, if you're not comfortable with this, leave it alone. WordPress is pretty good at dealing with these based upon the title of the actual content you create. Then you've got your categories and your tags. Now, categories, as you can see, there's the 4 categories we created: fitness, exercise, vegan, and vegetarian. Now, because fitness is set to be the default category, this post is automatically associated with that. However, you can change that if you want to. You can uncheck that and you can say this is vegan. So now we've associated with a different category. One step further, we can actually associate it with more than one category. So we could say this is actually vegan and vegetarian, for example. If you want to add another category, instead of having to go back through and like I've just shown you to create them, you can do it directly inside here. So we can say, let's add a new one in. I'm going to call this meal planning. If we want to, we can create a parent and child relationship. So in other words, underneath vegan, we might have subsections of vegan or subcategories of vegan. Well, all you need to do is choose the name of the category and then what the parent is going to be. So we'll say in this example, it's going to be vegan, and we'll say add new category. And you can see now we've got vegan. Underneath there, we've got meal planning is a subsection, subcategory, and vegetarian is its own category. Really, really easy. On top of that, tags. We can add tags inside here, and these tags could be basically anything. It's just a second way of grouping information together inside WordPress. So let's add a couple of tags in. Let's just say this is going to be food. We'll put a comma, and you see that creates a tag. And we'll say meal prep, put a comma. So we've now created 2 tags. Now we're just going to update this, but before we do, we want to set a featured image. Now, featured image is what we're going to use when we create our blog to have a nice visual draw to make people want to actually click on this particular post. So we'll say set featured image. This will take us straight through into our media library and show us any images we've already got uploaded, or you can switch over to upload files and you can upload a different image. So you want to make these sort of images quite enticing. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this image of the food and we'll say set featured image. So that's now created a featured image for us. You'll see where these come into play when we create the design for our blog section. Now, next up, you've got excerpt. If you want to put an excerpt in, you can do. Now, an excerpt is just primarily a sort of taster of what this post is going to be about to draw people's attention in. So a very brief synopsis of the actual post content. Now, depending upon how you set the theme up inside the customizer or how the theme works, some will use the excerpt, some won't. Some will use the excerpt if it's there, and if it's not, it'll just pull some information from the first paragraph of your post itself. So it's up to you if you want to use that. And as with most things, you've got help to tell you exactly how any of these features work. Finally, we have discussion. Now, discussion, if you remember back when we look at setting things up and doing a little bit of housekeeping, I said you can globally disable comments on your posts inside your blog, but if you wanted to, you could make them available on a post-by-post basis. Well, this is where you do it. Underneath the discussion, you can allow comments if you wanted to. Now, pingbacks and trackbacks sounds really complicated, and all it really means is if somebody on a different website links to your post on your blog, you'll be notified that someone's done that, and then if you make changes to that post, your website will try to update those linking websites to tell them something has changed. So it can be useful if you want to use it and you're expecting your site to be shared quite a lot. So really good for blogs. So you can leave that enabled if you want to, and generally I would say it doesn't do any harm to leave it enabled. But the allow comments, again, is entirely up to you. So now we've made some changes to things, we can now simply hit the update option, and that will save those changes for us. Now that we've finished creating our first post in WordPress, let's go back out of this. And to get out, all we need to do is click on this W in the top left-hand corner, and that'll take us back into our post listing. You can see that's now updated with the new post we've created, and it gives us some extra information. It tells us the title of the post, like we saw earlier on, who the author is. So if you have multiple authors as part of your blog, your site, whatever, this will list who wrote this particular post. Then you've got the categories this particular post is associated with, so meal planning, vegan, vegetarian, and so on. And also the tags, so food and meal prep. If you have comments, that will list inside there, and it tells you the date this was actually published. So as your blog grows, this will be a great way of being able to see exactly what categories anything is inserted into, any tags that are being used, and then if you want to, you can easily filter that out by using these options at the top. So you can see all our categories inside there, including the new category we've created. All dates is available, so as your blog grows, you'll be able to filter things down based upon the month and the year. So it's really good to see exactly what was written, what was posted, and so on. Okay, so that's the basics of creating posts. I'm going to quickly create a couple more posts so we've got some more content to work with, but we're going to hop back over now and we're going to see how we start setting up the design with the header and footer for our site.
Now we're ready to get stuck in and start realizing our design idea. Let's kick things off by designing and building our headers and footers for the entire website with the powerful header and footer builders built directly inside the Blocksy theme.
Okay, so now that I've got some extra content inserted, we're ready to start doing some of the fun stuff, which is basically designing things. So back into the customizer now of WordPress, and we're going to start off with the header and footer sections. And this is one of those areas that Blocksy really excels at, gives us a lot of control over creating custom headers and footers. To do that, all we need to do is choose either header or footer from the general options section. So let's start off with the header section. But before we do, we don't actually have any logo, we don't have any navigation or anything else built. So we need to rectify that first. Let's start off with the navigation. As we saw earlier on, you can simply come over to the header section, come over to the navigation on the top right, and just click on the little sideways teardrop, and that will open things up where we can style the actual design itself. Before we do that, we need to actually create the menu. You can see it tells us to select the menu. We don't have anything created. Easiest way to do that inside the customizer is to scroll down to core and come into menus. Inside there, we're going to say create a new menu. So we're just going to call this main menu, and we can then choose where we want this to be displayed. So the footer, the header menu 1, 2, mobile menu, and so on. So we're going to say we want this to be header menu 1. Click on next, and now we can start adding items in. And we can always come back to any of these and change the settings at any point should we want to. So if we want to add this to the footer, we can do that. Header menu 2, we can do that as well. Okay, so let's just say we're going to add some items in. Let's just start off by adding the home page. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a couple of categories in. So expand categories, and there's all the categories we have as part of our site. So let's just add those in. So we've now created our navigation. Once we've done that, we can simply finish this. So we'll come back out of this. And if we take a look at our design, there's all of our different headings, all set up for us in our navigation. So pretty cool. Next up, we need to add in our logo. So let's come back out of our menus, head back up, and what we're going to do is we're going to choose our header. So once we're inside our header, you can see this is pre-building things out. And what we have currently is 3 separate rows. Our top row, which isn't currently being used, our main row, which is holding our logo and our navigation, and then we've got the bottom row, which again isn't being used. So when there's nothing inside any of these, they're not being used at all, and therefore they won't display inside the design. If you want to change any settings, change any of the widgets, you can do all that by simply using drag and drop or choosing the relevant options. So at the moment, you can see we've got the logo, the menu 1, and we've got search. So if we want to get rid of search, for example, we can click on the X, and you can see now inside the customizer preview window, that's now been removed. If you want to make any changes to things, so for at the moment we don't actually have our logo inside there, we can come down, we can click on logo, and now on the left hand side that opens up all of the settings for that particular widget. So we're going to choose our logo, we say select logo, and I'm going to upload 2 different variations of the same logo. So I've got a black version and a white version of our logo. So because our heading section is currently light, we're going to choose the dark version and hit select, and you see that now includes our logo, but we're also showing the actual text underneath, which we don't want. So what we need to do is just uncheck this box that says site title, and that's now gone. If you want to show your site tagline, if you have one, you can do that inside here, but we haven't set one. You can set one if you want to, but for this example, we're going to leave that off. You can also choose different logos for different types of devices. So at the moment, this is going to be used on desktops, whereas if we wanted something different on a tablet and mobile, we can choose that on there. We can also set different values for the logo height. So at the moment, the logo is probably a little bit on the large side. So let's just reduce that down to something like around 30 pixels. That now looks a lot better when we're dealing with mobile devices. Let's check that out on our tablets. And you can see probably a little too big on there. So let's set that to something like 40. And there we go. Looks pretty cool. We can also come into the design option and we can fine tune the margins inside there. And again, the margins are associated with the screen size that we're working with. So we can have different margins for desktop, for tablets, and for mobiles. We can lock those values together. So we can say we'll put 5 pixels, and you can see because they're locked, all of those have 5 pixels around them. Or we can unlock that and we can set different ones. So we can say top and bottom will have 15 and left and right will stay as 5. You can also change from a fixed pixel value to percentages, ems, rems, or points, depending upon what kind of way you want to work. So pretty cool to see you have all those controls. And if we want to reset things, we can just simply come over and hit the little reset arrow, and that will now reset it back. So that's all looking pretty good. I like the look of that. If we want to take a look at editing anything to do with the menu, we can do that by coming out to the menu widget in the right-hand side of our main row. So we can click on there, and you can see now we have all the options to do with setting everything up for the main menu section. So we can choose different types of menus. Currently we have 4 different variations. So we can choose those different variations, and you can see we get slightly different effects for whichever one we choose. And everything is still fully editable. So let's just say I like the look of this one, for example. Well, what I can do now is I can hop over to the design section, and if I want to, I can change the font that's being used, the colors that are being used, the active colors. Any drop downs, if we're using multi-level menu structures, we can control all the design aspects of that, including the actual item hover effect. So we have lots and lots of control to make sure that you can fine tune and get this exactly what you want. You also see we've got these font colors and the font sort of sizes and those kinds of things. You see we've got default font and the pixel values and so on. We can set a lot of these things up, like the colors can actually be taken from our color palette. So at the moment, you can see this is using the green color. So if we come back out of this, come all the way back up and we go into our colors option, we are using color palette 1, which is using the green as a sort of primary colors alongside the grey blues and a white. Let's just say we want to set that to orange. We can change that, and you can see now anywhere that uses those global colors inside Blocksy, the theme that we're working with, now pick that up. So you can use these color palettes to easily create color sets to design your site. So if you're creating multiple different sites using this particular theme or with their own color palettes, you can easily set that up inside here, and then those colors become referenceable inside the various different parts of our site. So we go back to our header, back to our menu, and we take a look at the design option. You can see now the active color has changed, the font color has changed, and so on. They are the global colors. So really cool to see that. Just means you can quickly and easily change things when you're using this by using those global color settings. So now that we've seen how easy it is to style the widgets inside any of our header sections, what about the row itself? Well, you can see when we take our mouse over, we get this little cog icon on the left-hand side. We can click on that and we can now control the actual row details. So the design, the height, the full width, whether it's sticky, and so on. So you can see at the moment this is set to default, which means that it's going to kind of sit inside the overall size of our design. But if you have a full width, if you have larger screens, this will kind of just default to the left and the right hand size of the entire screen width. Up to you which way you want to go. I generally tend to go for the default because I think it looks a little nicer. You can also then do things like adjust the row minimum height. So you can see if we want a smaller navigation section at the top like this, we can easily do that. Now, if you want to make this sticky, you can do that by selecting this option. So that'll make it sticky, and we can then choose the stickiness, the row max height, and so on. However, if we scroll up, you can see it doesn't actually stick to the top of the screen. That's because we need to globally enable the sticky option. This just says whether this row is enabled to be sticky. So to do that, we come back out to our headers. Go to headers, into global header, and there we can set the sticky functionality. So we'll select that, and we now have a sticky header. And again, we've got lots of different types of sticky. So you want only the main row, which is what we currently have. Do you want the top and main row? Do you want all rows? Do you want the main and bottom row? Tons of options, including the effect that you want for the sticky. So you could say you want fade, for example, and that will fade in and fade out. So lots of controls on exactly how you want to do that. I'll disable that for now. And if you want transparent functionality, you can also enable that. And then you can set up the conditions you want. And this is one of those things that makes this, for a free theme, incredibly powerful. Now at the moment it doesn't look very good because this is just kind of overlapping. But if you had a nice big strong header image in there, then you could easily have a nice transparent header, and then you can set this up where you want. So at the moment, this is going to apply to every single page, no matter what, on the entire site. But you might not want that. You might only want this to be available on the home page, for example. Well, you can use the add and edit conditions to do just that. Click and open that up. You now have a set of simple conditions. You can choose when to include it and when to exclude it. And now you can just simply set up whatever conditions that you want. So at the moment, this is set to show on the entire website, except for the 404, the search, and the archive pages. But you can set this up the way that you want. You can even set up user conditions. So there's lots of options. For now, though, we're going to just leave this as it is and disable the sticky functionality and the transparent header functionality. So let's just say we want to put some nice little links at the top for all our social networks, so our Facebook and Twitter and so on. Well, this is really easy to do. At the moment, we've got just the main row is set up. Let's just activate the top row and let's add some things inside there. So we'll select the top row and we can choose the design options if we want to, like the background. So let's change the background over to this dark blue color. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in some widgets. So to do that, we're simply going to click inside the first section, come back out of this, and we're going to come into elements. And now we can just choose socials, for example, and drop that into the top right-hand corner. Click to open socials up, and now we have a ton of options inside there to choose what social networks we want to include and all the design and styling options we want, general and design. So there's tons of options inside here. So what we're going to do is let's just add in one more just to see how easy this is, and we'll just say we'll add in YouTube, for example. Okay, so we'll add that and we'll reorder that. We'll say YouTube is the most important, and now you can see in the top right-hand corner there's all of our social icons. Want to adjust the size? We're going to adjust the size. Make them smaller, no problem whatsoever. Want to change the design aesthetic? We can do that too. So let's just say we want those to be white, and they now stand out a lot more. So pretty cool. We've got our social icons at the top, and we've customized how this all looks. Next thing we need to do is set this up for our mobile header. So let's click on mobile, and you can see there's our mobile header, and we can make sure now if we want to make any changes to it. So this time it changes a little bit. We've still got those 3 rows, and you can see only the main row is currently active. Our social icons are not on there. We've also got the off canvas menu, and if we click to open that up, we can now control how that looks. And what this basically means is if we click on the little icon there, you can see there's our setup. Now it's telling us we don't actually have a menu created for this yet, so we need to assign a menu for this. That's really easy to do. What we're going to do, like we've done before, is come back out of this. I'm going to go right the way down, and we're going to choose the option for menus. And inside there, we're just going to say we want to edit this first menu, and we're going to say this is going to be a mobile menu as well. So now we've set the same menu to be in the header menu and the mobile menu. So we test that out. You can see there's all of our different sections inside there, which replicates what we can see on the normal desktop version. So we've configured everything now for our header the way that we want. Let's move on to our footer. Now we can edit the footer in a very similar fashion to how we edit the header. Obviously there's going to be slightly different options inside here. So we can come down to the footer itself, click edit, or we can come to the left hand side and choose footer from there. Both will do pretty much the same thing. Okay, so now we've got the footer builder. So as you can see, we've got a top row, we've got a middle row, and we've got a bottom row. So all those things are exactly the same. Now we can come in and we can just fine tune everything. So for example, the copyright that's in there at the moment, we can click on that and we can change that to something else. So we can just change that from powered by, and we'll just put WPTuts in there, and there we go. So we've now changed our footer. Really simple. Want to change your alignments? You can do all those kinds of things. Want to change those based upon the device that's being used? Again, really easy to do. We can simply make any changes we want to on any of those devices. Pretty cool. Same goes for vertical alignment, whether you want to make these visible on any of the devices. So you might say that a particular section is only available on the desktop or only available on a mobile. Well, you can do that by simply selecting it and then choosing the visibility based upon the device that's going to be viewed on. And finally, we have the design option as well. So we can easily fine tune this Now that's just how we can edit the widget. If we want to change the row, you can see all we do is the same as before. We'll select the bottom row in this example. We can choose the number of columns we want in there, the vertical spacing, the vertical alignment, all those things are there. Come to design, for example, you can see the row background is set to this pale gray. We can choose from any of our global colors and we'll click on that. Or we could choose a gradient and we can choose any of the predefined gradients inside there. Or we can create a custom gradient. We can choose between linear and radial. Or we can even come in and set an image inside there. So you've got lots of options to fine tune this to get exactly what you want. For this though, we'll just set this to be this dark blue color. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back to general, going to come back into our copyright. And inside there, we're going to do a design and change our font color to be white. So that now looks a lot better. So pretty cool. If you want to add extra rows in, you can do just that. So you can say we want to add a middle row where you can set up the different types of design, the number of columns, all those kinds of really useful things are there. When you're ready to add any items into that, you can simply click inside and we can come back out of this and we can say, now we can go in and add any of the items that we want. So we might say that we want to put something like, let's just choose this again. We'll set that to be 2 and we'll set this to be really, really simple. Like come back into a section, come back out of here and we're going to say we want to put the footer menu inside there. Drop that into that section, and then we'll say we put socials on this side. Click on our socials, for example, and again, we can add anything we want inside there, choosing the alignment. So we set that to be right-hand side. You see, that's now set things up inside there, looking pretty good. We don't have a menu set up, so we can do the same as we did before. We can just check on that, come back out, and we can say we could set this up to be whatever menu we want. So again, let's come back out of this, go right the way back down to our menus, and come in and just set up the options inside here, and we're going to say footer menu is going to use the same menu again, and you can see now there's our footer menu inserted into there. Click back, edit on there, come back in, and we can say we'll set the row background color and we'll choose this darker gray, and we can do the same then with our font colors. Into design, change those colors over to white, for example, and the same for the socials. Come back in to our design, set the color, set white. You can see it's really quick and easy to do this. And if you want to set custom colors, so we might say we don't want that kind of gray there, come back into our design, choose our background color. We'll choose this dark blue so it kind of matches, but then we're going to just tweak it a little bit so it's not quite the same color. Just a slight difference in the shades there. And you can see now we just created a custom footer, and it's as easy as that. You can get as creative as you want. You have tons of widgets available. All of those little widgets have their own custom settings. So really get stuck in, get creative, and create something pretty unique.
Now, probably the most important page on the entire website is the home page, and it needs to capture the message you want to convey to your intended audience. Now, as we're working on a blog today, we want to entice people by letting them see either the latest blog posts or a selection of our most important ones. So with that in mind, let's move on to setting up the design for our homepage with a nice, strong visual design.
So now we've seen how easy it is to work on the headers and footers. Let's just quickly publish this to save our changes. And let's come back out and let's start working on the look of this homepage. Come right the way back out, and what we're going to do is we're going to scroll until we find blog posts, because at the moment our home page is set up just to display our blog posts. That's perfectly fine, because at the end of the day this is a blog website. So what we're going to do is we're going to fine tune and tweak this. At the moment it looks okay, but it's not the nicest look, and there's also a couple of things I don't really like. For example, we've got differing amounts of text being displayed, and that just looks a little bit rubbish. So how do we deal with this? Well, as before, we can simply click on edit if we want to open up all the options, or we can just come into the customizer on the left hand side and choose what we want to control. Now we have 5 different blog layouts we can pick and choose from, and then we can fine tune and customize each one of those as well. So at the moment we're looking at this, which is a grid setup of 3x3 showing however many posts we've got. Well, that looks okay, but we can make it look a lot better. So you could choose a very simple option if you wanted to, and this will put a very simple layout of stacking one on top of the other with a left, right, description, content, and so on, and a picture on the opposite side. Or you can have nice big images like so. So if you've got a very visual looking blog, like this one where you've got food, it could be quite interesting to have that to be left, right, and center, as it were. It becomes the most important thing. This one is the enhanced grid, which I kind of like. What this will do is it'll give you 2, then 3, then 2, then 3, and so on. I think that looks pretty cool, and it's a little bit more visually interesting than just a typical stacked on top of each other. Finally, we've got the Gutenberg layout, which uses the kind of Gutenberg editor to create this kind of layout, which is okay. But personally, I kind of prefer this enhanced grid option. Now, once you've settled upon your blog structure, then you're ready to move on and start customizing it. So each one of these individual items is called a card. And the card in this example is going to show us things like the category is associated with, the title, the featured image, content, and so on. Well, we can come into the card options and we can fine tune and configure that. So at the moment, we've got X number of posts per page. Well, we might want to keep that a little bit more minimal. So let's just say we want to set this to be 5. That will give us a nice layout where we have 2 larger images and 3 smaller ones underneath. So enough to pique people's interest. Now, if we look at each one of these cards, each one has a set of different card elements. So we have things like post meta, title, featured image, excerpt, post meta, and so on. Now, don't worry too much if these terms don't mean a lot to you, because as you start configuring these, you will see exactly what's happening on screen, which will give you a good understanding of what each different card element actually relates to. So these card elements are broken down into a couple of different things. The little eyeball just allows us to enable and disable that particular item. So you can see by disabling the post meta, that removes the categories this comes from. By clicking back on the eye to enable it, you can see they come back. We can also expand these out. So we can click and you can see this is now going to show up additional information if we want to. We can stack more of these post meta items on top of each other. Right now, we simply have categories, but we can add any of the other options. So author, comments, publish date, updated dates, tags, and so on. So let's just say we want to add the tags in. We can click and we can just say add, and there we go. We've now added the tags in. If you want to click on the X to remove those, you can do that, or you can click and expand them, and you can choose how they're going to be separated, whether they're going to be simple, whether they're going to be little buttons, whether they're going to be underlined. You can style these, configure them however you want. Do you want to use simple? Do you want to use labels, for example? Do you want to use underline buttons? Lots and lots of different options on there. So let's just remove that one from there for now. So that's quite cool. We can see how easy that is. We'll close that down. The title, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. That is the title of the particular post. And probably not the best idea to remove that. Otherwise, no one really knows what it's called. Featured image, I would also recommend keeping that on there. And again, we can expand that out and you can see we can change various different things, including the image ratio. So at the moment, this is showing a 4:3 style image, but we could set that to be 16:9 if we wanted to. 1:1, so it's a square. 2:1, so it's more of a sort of widescreen look. And you can also reverse these, so you can flip them horizontally and vertically. So you might want to do a 1:1, and you might want to do a 3:4, for example, and you can flip that between horizontal and vertical. So lots of options. You can even set a custom value inside there and do whatever you want. We're going to put this back to predefined, and we're going to set that and leave it as the 4:3. I think that looks pretty good. You can also choose the medium, large, full-size thumbnail and so on, the different kinds of size images that WordPress by default sets up when you upload an image. I would suggest looking at the quality of the image on the screen and the number of posts you have and finding the smallest image sizes you can get away with while still keeping good quality. That's going to mean that your page is just going to load that a little bit quicker because you're not loading in really, really big images. So the featured images, that's all set up. If we come and take a look at the excerpt, for example, you can see this is where we can control how many words are going to be used, or you can just disable it completely. So for me, I'm going to disable this because I think the visuals and the title are going to be strong enough to grab people's attention. The other thing we can do is we can reorder any of these as well. So we might think that what I'd like to do is put the name of the post at the top, but I want to take the things like the meta information, I want to put that underneath alongside the author details. So what we need to do, drag that down. There we go. We've now created a custom setup. If we don't like that, we can just change it. If we don't want, for example, the date it was posted and so on, well, we can just get rid of it. Simple as that. Really, really easy to do. And you also have tons of options then for the spacing and so on. Come into design and we can fine tune and configure the titles. We can change the things like the font family and so on. Just bear in mind where you have this title font is using default family and default weight and so on. Those are the values that you've set up at the beginning using the typography options. So if you start to override those, if you make changes to your global typography from the typography section, they won't take effect inside there. So just bear that in mind, just to make sure that you don't update things in different places and then wonder why you're making changes and it doesn't necessarily work the way you expect it to. So speaking of things like that, let's come back to our typography and let's just change the weight of these, because at the moment I think bold 700 is a little bit heavyweight. So let's just change that to something like 500. And we'll do the same then for heading 2. We'll set that to 500 as well. And you see now the heading 2 is what's being used for these. And we do the same then for heading 3. Just set that to medium 500. Okay. And as you can see, anywhere that uses that global font value will update accordingly. And the same goes for your base font. Let's just say you didn't want to use that system font. You wanted to use something like, I don't know, let's just say Montserrat. We can start searching for that, find what we want, and there we go. Now everything that uses the fonts has updated to Montserrat. You could say you wanted to use something like Nonito. And again, we'll do the same thing, and there we go. We now change it to Nonito, and that will globally change all these headings unless you have a different font family set up inside there. So it's really easy to make those changes globally to your entire site. Okay, so we've pretty much got our homepage where we want it to be. A couple of other things we can take a look at before we leave this. Some of these options, things like your page elements. Now, at the moment, we have no sidebar on here. But if you wanted to use a sidebar, you could do that. So we can enable that, and that will pull the sidebar in onto the right-hand side using the default values inside there. Now, for me, I don't think this looks particularly great where you've got this kind of layout. So for this home page, I would generally tend to disable that option. So we'll take that off. You also see we've got pagination at the bottom, but you can, if you want to, disable that. So you might say on the home page, this is just going to have a certain list of posts, the most recent, for example, and that's all that's going to be on there. If you want to dig in deeper, you go down and use the menu structure. Well, you can enable or disable that directly from inside here. You can even add in card reveal effects. So if we enable that, we'll now get a little bit of animation for each of these cards as they come onto the screen. So you add a little bit of visual movement to the design, which is quite cool. Okay, so we're going to say we're happy with the home page. We'll hit publish on that, and we've now built out our home page. So now we've got a couple more pages to take a look at editing before we're ready to launch our blog.
Now, what good would a blog be if we didn't have a great looking blog section? Let's move on now and set that up to mimic our homepage and provide a real sense of design continuity.
Okay, so we've done the homepage. Now we want to do the single post and the category pages. So what am I talking about? Let's start off with the categories. So we know we've got vegetarian as a category. Let's click and open that up. And you can see this is what we're presented with. So it's kind of fallen back to the original design that we had on the homepage. So we need to update this now so everything is consistent on our site. So click edit on that, and that will open up the category section under blog. If you didn't want to use that option, you can simply come over to the left-hand side, and underneath there, you've got your post types, your blog posts, and categories and single posts. Categories is what we're working on right now. So all we're going to do is set this up to look pretty much exactly the same as the home page. So we'll choose the enhanced grid option. We'll see we've got everything set up on there. Going to come into our card options. We're going to just drag this down, or we'll disable it, whatever we want to do. We'll take off the excerpt. So we'll just disable that, and everything is looking pretty good there. So that's that done. Really, really simple, other than just changing the number of posts. And we need to make sure that everything looks good. So we've got 5 in each kind of block. So if we set this to be, if we leave it at 10, for example, as this grows, we then have 10 items on the page, and it will balance out visually. If you need to make any changes to your card type, your gaps and so on, like you've done on the previous one, or any of the design options, you can do that inside here in exactly the same way as we've just done it with the home page. This is just setting up for a category. Okay, so once that's done, we now want to come back out of this, and now we're going to do the individual post. So we can click on an individual post, open that up, and this is now going to show us what our post will look like. So same again, we can simply come over and edit sections on here, or we can come over to the left-hand side, this time choose single posts. Click on there, and again, we have those predefined layouts with additional options. So we might say we like this kind of thin-looking layout, or we want to have a normal full-width kind of layout. It's up to you. I kind of like this narrower layout, looks pretty cool. You can then choose whether you want your content area wide or boxed. So it's up to you. So you can see if we choose boxed, we have this nice little sort of white background around it, whereas wide kind of gets rid of that. It just sits on the background itself. You could even control things like the content area, the vertical spacing and so on. I would generally enable the featured image because I think if it's a nice strong image, it just visually adds that little bit of impact when you land on the page. That's pretty nice to see. But again, we've got all these options. We can enable, disable any of them. Where you have a little arrow like this, you can see featured image. We can click to go in even deeper and see even more options inside there. So again, we can control things like the image width. So we can do wide like so, or we can do full, which will give us a full width. Again, entirely up to you how you want to do it. You can change the ratio. You can change what size image is going to be used. You can choose the visibility on the different kinds of devices, and you can choose where the actual image is displayed, whether it's above or below the title. So there are an abundance of options to fine-tune and configure exactly how this all looks to make sure it is unique to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back to wide because I think that looked just a little bit nicer. And as we can see, everything looks pretty cool. Let's come back out of this. And we can make any more option changes that we want inside here. So we might want to put the author information underneath if we've got a lot of authors, or we can just simply enable the author box. And once we do that, we get this little arrow popping at the side, at which point we can then make changes to how that looks. So you've got different styles. You can see that will show the different style, the post count, social icons, where you want to make this visible, lots of different options, including, like I say, as we see, the design options. So we'll just disable that because I don't want that on there. And underneath, we've got the options then for page elements. This is kind of like your related posts. And if you've got comments enabled, they would sit underneath. And again, you can easily come in and fine tune this. You might say you only want to put 2 posts in there, or 1 post in there, or 10 posts in there. You have options for all these different things. So now we've gone ahead and we've configured how our individual blog post looks, alongside various other parts of our blog, including the blog index and the homepage. So now we pretty much have a fully featured blog all set up, ready to go. There's still tons more we can do. And the nice thing with Blocksy is you have so many options that you can easily come in and create something truly unique just using it. And like I say, this is the free version of the theme as well. So it's great to see. So now we've done all this, let's have a little look at the front end and see where we are at the moment and how everything looks and works. So let's just really quickly reload our site, and we can see there's our animation effects for our homepage. We scroll down, as we see the extra ones, they'll lazy load in and load in quite nicely. So that's what our homepage is currently looking like. We click and take a look at any of our posts. We click and go in, and we can see there's our post layout, which we just customized. All the images are inside there, the sharing options, related posts, and so on. That's looking pretty nice. And then we can take a look at any of our sections, any of our categories, and again you can see there's our different categories all set up, looking pretty awesome. So I think we've already got a great looking blog put together, which we can continue to tweak and fine tune to get exactly what we want.
Now, while not strictly a vital part of any kind of blog, it can be really useful to have a contact page to allow your growing fan base to be able to contact you if they need to. So let's take a look at how we can easily add a contact page to our new blog.
So now we've built our blog, what about if we want people to get in touch with us because they want to just tell us how amazing our blog is? Well, to do that, we're going to need to add in a form plugin. Now, we're going to use a free one again, but there are tons of paid options if you need those. But for a simple contact form, there's plenty of free options. To do that, we're going to come into plugins and add new. And we're simply going to search for a plugin called WP Forms. We'll install that. And once that's installed, we'll activate it and we'll get started creating our contact form. Okay, so now that's all activated. And we've got a little welcome screen that gives us a sort of step-by-step if you're new to this. So I would recommend taking a look at that if you're not too comfortable. But let's create our first form. Okay, so once we've done that, we can now create any kind of form we want. And you can see there's a couple of starter templates we can choose from. So we want a simple contact form. Let's hit create a simple contact form, and that will load in the editor. Now you can see we've got our first and last name, email, and comment or message. If you want to add more, you can simply drag and drop anything you want in. So you might want to put something, I don't know, maybe like a phone number or something, where you can simply drag that into your design, drop it in there, and you can see that now puts in a new entry, at which point we can easily just edit any of the information by selecting it. And we could just change this label to telephone, put a description if you want to, make it required if you need to, so they have to fill that out. Any advanced options, so you can set up some styling and things inside there. But for the most people, you don't need to change anything. You can just go with the default options. For this example though, we don't need that, so we'll just get rid of it. And that's our simple contact form put together. We'll change that, and we'll change that from simple contact form to contact me. And we'll leave that as it is. Okay, so underneath the notifications, if you want to set any notifications, you can do that inside there. Same for confirmations. As you can see, this will just send a message to someone that's actually contacted you saying, thank you very much for contacting us, blah, blah, blah. Which you can obviously adjust this to whatever you want inside there. Now, once you've got everything set up in your form, the next thing you need to do is set up where it gets sent to. To do that, we can come into settings, and from there, underneath notifications, you can see there's your default notification, and you can see send to email address, email subject, and so on. So you can tweak these if you want to, change it to whatever you want. Admin email is the email address you use when you set up your account with WordPress, but if you want to change that to something else, you can simply just insert your own email address inside there, and that's where the form will be sent to. Now, smart tags are basically just little tags that can be used to pre-fill out information based upon info that's stored as part of your WordPress site, such as the admin email. But for most use cases, for what you're doing here, which is a simple blog, you can either just leave the admin email inside there, or you can set up and type in your own email address. Email subject, well, we don't want to change that. We want to change that to something like message from my blog. And you can say from name, well, we can just say Bill's blog, whatever you want to do in there. So you can change any of these fields, and once you're happy with that and everything is set up, you can simply hit the save option. So now we've created that form, let's create the page that's going to display the form. So we can come back out of this now, we can exit from WP Forms. There's our form, there's our shortcode if we need to use it. And what we can do is we can copy that from there, and I'll show you how you can use shortcodes. So we'll just copy that. Going to come to pages this time and say add new. And this we're going to call contact me. Okay, so that's been done. Now underneath, we're just going to click inside there. We're going to click to add a shortcode, or we can do a search for a widget that's to do with WP Forms. And there we go. There's our WP Forms widget. However, if you didn't have something like this and you wanted to use just the shortcode, you can type in shortcode, click to add that in there, and then all we need to do is paste our shortcode in. And that has then inserted that contact form. But like I say, with this particular item, it's easier just to use its native option. So we're going to get rid of that, come back up, just type in WP, insert our WP Forms, and then we can just simply select our contact form from there, and bang, there's our contact form inserted into our page. As simple as that. We can publish this page, and we click publish on there, and what we can do now is we can come back out of this, and we can go into appearance and into our menus, and we can add this into our navigation. So there's our main menu. Add contact me, we'll click and add that underneath there, and we'll hit save menu, and we've now added that into our site. If we come back over to our homepage, and we'll see we've got contact me now has been added into our navigation. Let's click and open that up, and you see there's our contact form. Doesn't look great, so we can tidy that up in a moment, make it look a little bit more interesting, but you can see the form is inserted in here, and we now have that as part of our navigation and also part of our site. So let's take a look at how we can make that just look a little bit more in keeping with the rest of our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our form widget, and from there we're going to turn this into a column, and then we're just simply going to apply a different color to the background. So we'll say transform to column just by using the little option at the top, and then we're going to choose our color settings, and we're going to set the background color to white, and you can see that now has put spacing around it, put a white background in, which kind of keeps this a little bit more in keeping with the sort of blocks that we have as part of our homepage and our blog listings and so on. Let's just update that. We'll hop back over then to our page, and we'll refresh this, and now that already looks a lot better. Still so much more we could do to this, but I think you kind of get the picture with where we're going with it. And if you want to get more creative, get stuck in and really experiment and play about with what you can do with both WordPress, Gutenberg, and the Blocksy theme. So you have lots of options on what you can do. So what we have now is pretty much a full blog with everything that we kind of need to get everything up and running. But there's so many more things you could do.
Now that we've built the blog and it's ready for you to add in your awesome and life-changing content, we also need to help the search engines like Google be able to see our content and give us the best chance of getting it ranked for our chosen topic. Now to do that, we need to add some more features to WordPress to allow us to add some extra information to help us show up more consistently in the search engine results. For that, we'll be using another free plugin called Rank Math.
Now, what I want to talk about next is basically SEO, or search engine optimization. And if you don't know what SEO is, don't worry. All it really means is applying certain little pieces of information to every single page or post that you create that helps you get found by search engines like Google. We're going to be using another free tool called Rank Math. Now, Rank Math is a very well-respected SEO plugin, like I say, completely free version, but it gives you tons and tons of options. I've created a video on how to use this, which I will link to in the description below. So if you're interested in finding out more and how to get more out of it, I would recommend checking that out to get you up to speed. This is only going to show you how to install it and just show you very quickly around the interface. So as before, we're in the plugin section. We're going to click Add New. We're going to do a search for Rank Math. Once we find that, we're going to go through the same process. We'll install this, and once installed, we'll activate it, and then we'll take a look at what it does. Now, once you install Rank Math, the first thing you're going to see is this wizard that's going to guide you through the basic setup. First thing you want to do is connect to your account. If you don't have an account, you can set one up. It's totally free, and it helps you speed up the process of setting SEO up using Rank Math in the future. You can skip this if you want to, or you can connect to your account. Now, I've got an account, so I'm going to choose the option to connect to my account. Once I've done that, then I'm ready to carry on. Okay, I've connected that to my account, and now I'm ready to move on to the next stage. So I'm using the free version, so the pro option is not going to be available. I would recommend, if you are new to this, using the easy option, because this is going to guide you through most of the things you're going to need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose easy, and then we're going to go through the wizard. So we say start the wizard. It's going to ask us a couple of things, and we just need to simply fill out the information or supply the relevant graphics and so on. So my cool blog is a personal blog, but you can choose between various different things. This is a personal blog, so that's perfectly fine. It's already gone ahead and found my logo to use that for Google. That's perfectly fine. If you want to change it, you can just simply change that from there. Default social share image. If you want to set up a default image, could be your logo, could be a specific graphic, could be anything you want. This will then, if you don't use a featured image, for example, if someone shares your post, this will use the as a kind of fallback image. So what we're going to do, I'll just choose one of my images from there and say, that one will do. We'll say use that, and that's pretty cool. Save and continue. We'll go to the next step. Connect it to the Google services. So if you have accounts to do with, your Google Analytics and so on, you can set that up and connect it up at this point. I'm going to skip that step for now, but I would recommend that you connect it if you're using those and you're comfortable with them. I'm going to skip that, and we're going to go on now, and you see we now come to the end of this. So this just tells us, okay, you've done the wizard. We're now ready to go. So return to the dashboard. Now, don't be overwhelmed by all this. Like I say, I've got a tutorial that'll take you through all of this if you're interested. I just want to show you, now we've run through the setup wizard, how you add SEO options to the posts that you create or any posts you've created in the past. All we need to do is come into the post section, and we're going to take a look at our posts. You can see we now have an extra column called SEO details, and inside there we have some extra options. The rating, which is currently set to NA because we haven't set any SEO options for any of our posts. We set a keyword, which is what we want to rank for. So if it's about, for example, vegan diet, then you can use vegan diet as your particular keyword. Your schema, don't worry too much about that. It just basically tells the search engines what type of post you've created. So it could be a recipe, it could be an article, it could be multiple different things. This allows you to set that up on a post by post basis. And then things like links for internal and external links, linking to other people's sites or sites linking back to you and so on. Okay, so let's open up a post now and take a look at what we can do for our SEO. Now, if we take a look at the top right-hand corner, you can see there's our rank math rating for this particular post. Now, we're not going to get great ratings because we're just using filler text. But obviously, if you are spending time to create content that has the right kinds of keyword or keywords and phrases in there, what you want to rank for, once you start to work through the SEO side of things, and it's just a step-by-step process, once you kind of work through that, that score inherently will increase. So don't take what I'm showing as indicative of what you will get. Mine's just filler text. So what we can do is we click on this option. You can see we now have a new section on the right hand side, which is all to do with rank math. This will show us a preview of what our search result would look like in search engine like Google, for example. And these are just called snippets. So what you can do is you can easily come in and edit this. This is just going to pull in what it considers to be the right info. So it's pulling in the title, the link, and a brief overview of what this particular page is about. And that's just grabbing it from this first opening paragraph, which isn't always the best way to go about it. So you can edit this snippet, and now you can come in and you can fine tune this completely, which is what I would generally tend to recommend. You want to set a good title that's catchy and interesting, and you want someone to grab their attention. So we're just going to say, this is amazing vegan recipes for all. If I could spell recipes. Okay, so we've created a simple title, and as you can see, this is now ranking our title. We're not getting a good ranking because we're not using enough characters and we're not really giving enough information. But you can see how easy it is to start changing this. So amazing vegan recipes for all on a tight budget. So that's increasing the word count, which means that we get better scores on there. Permalink, I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's being pulled in from your title. Last up, we've got the description field. Now, what the description field is doing as default is just pulling in the first 150, 160 characters from the first paragraph of your page, which is not necessarily the best way to go about it. Much better to craft something that grabs people's attention and makes them want to read your content. So for that, I've simply just created this little more interesting intro, and if we take a look at our preview at the top, you can see there's all of our new updated information that we've manually put in to give us the best chance of ranking. Now, next up, we've also got the social option. We click on there. This is how we'll see if someone shares this particular post on a social media site, such examples as Facebook and Twitter. This is going to give us who it's from. It's going to give us the image that we've got set as our featured image and this little bit of information underneath it. And again, this is kind of using that same info. But if we want to, we can change all this. We can change the image to something completely different. We could say we want to change it for this one, for example. And you can see that will update it on there. We can change the title, the description. We can even add an icon overlay to the thumbnail. And we can set these up to be different based upon whether it's Facebook or Twitter. So you can fine-tune both your social sharing options and the general information you'll see in a search engine result, all done inside this particular section. So that's that done. There's our snippet done. Next up, you've got the focus keyword. So we're just going to call this vegan meals. Now, you can see we've got some extra options. This will suggest what it thinks are great options for us. So vegan meals for beginners, for example. Well, there's our first thing. Now, obviously, we're going to get pretty poor scores on this because we haven't optimized our content and our title and so on for that particular key phrase. But if we take a look underneath, you can see we now get 4 different sections that tells us how we can go about getting a much better chance of ranking our content. If we work through these, if they're relevant, you say don't think you've got to get a 100% score on everything like this because sometimes there are things that are not relevant. Go through those, fine-tune, configure your article, all the content that goes with it to give yourself the best chance, and Rank Math is going to make that whole process a lot easier. So once you've worked through all that, you're simply going to hit update on your page, and then we've set the SEO for this particular page, at which point we can come back and repeat that for every single page or post on our site. And you see, if we take a look at the post listings, we now get this little overview on the top right-hand side. It's now been filled out. There's our score, there's our keyword, there's our schema, and any links and so on we've got. So that's how you go about doing the basics of SEO. But if you want to learn more, take a look at the link in the description that goes through Rank Math in a lot more detail.
So now you've got your feet wet building your own WordPress blog, you're probably ready to learn even more. So check out the playlist you can see on screen to help you get more out of your new website. As always, all of the applicable links are in the description below. And if you've made it this far into the video, well, why not give that thumbs up button a click? It really does help me out. Now, while you're at it, if you like the content, why not also click the subscribe button and slap the bell icon to be notified when new content is added. However, if you didn't get any value from this video, well, you can hit the thumbs down button twice, as that works pretty well too. My name is Paul C, this is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.